I know you're out there. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. A world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries. A world where anything is possible. Where we go from there is a choice I leave to you.
The Krisanne Hall Show.
Any varmint that crosses that lady's path has met its match.
Come on!
Rise and shine, liberty-loving patriots. Listen to my voice today. That's what happens when I go on the road and teach every day. For a while, everybody's like, Krisanne, how do you do this? How do you keep up this pace? And I really, frankly, I don't feel it while I'm in it, It's when I come out that I really, really crash. And I notice my voice starting to wane over the weeks. And this is a particularly interesting span of time because I'm usually speaking 3 weeks, and then I'm off a week, and then 3 weeks, and then I'm off a week. But this time, as happens rarely, but does happen, my 3 weeks came back to back. So I'm continually speaking now for 6 weeks. And I actually have like 2 more weeks of this. And I'm going to be speaking almost every single day in a different city. So come the end of these 2.5 weeks or so, it's going to be very interesting how my voice sounds. But I'm going to, I do try to take good care of my voice. I drink lots of tea and do what I can to rest my voice when I'm not on the air and when I'm not speaking. Sometimes, though, it's difficult because sometimes I'm speaking 2 and 3 times a day. And then you have the Saturday workshops, which is, 6 hours of teaching, sometimes more, because even though the instructional part is 5 hours, then you have your breaks and everybody else is breaking and I'm still talking. So you're just going to have to give me a pass on my voice because it's just part of the job and part of what I'm doing, part of the sacrifice that we make. And it's not glorifying myself. I'm glorifying God for the strength to do this because I don't know how else I could do what I do. I made some new friends in California, and one of the dear new friends that I met, she and I and my husband were talking, and we were talking about my schedule, and she said to my husband, she said, "Your wife is just not normal." And I said, "Not normal? What does that mean, not normal?" She said, it's the schedule that you keep and the pace that you keep is just not normal. Normal people don't do that. But for me, what is normal, right? Isn't perception reality? Well, I don't know. That's the real question for today. Is perception reality? Because I had a very interesting discussion last night with a very, very nice, very, very passionate lady. And it is surrounding this understanding of perception being reality. My friend Judy brought me this quote. It's from a play by a man named Robert Bolt about the life of St. Thomas More. It's called A Man for All Seasons. And the quote says, "Some men say the earth is round, and some say it's flat. If it's round, can the king's command flatten it? And if it's flat, can Parliament make it round?" Now I understand we're dealing with this in reality, right? In this place, St. Thomas More is saying, fact is fact. And can the king or parliament alter that fact? Well, of course not. The king and parliament cannot alter that fact. But you see, some things become muddied when we start operating as if they are so. If we operate and believe the king's command that it is flat, is it flat? No, not in reality. But in practicality, is it? Because if we operate as if it's flat and we don't venture outside its flatness, then is that so? You see, the president has declared Congress irrelevant and impotent. If Congress will not pass laws, I will. I have a pen and a phone. Right? Well, is Congress impotent and irrelevant? Well, of course not. Not in reality. Not according to the Constitution. But if they operate that way, are they not actually irrelevant and impotent? I mean, I don't mean to be all esoteric and philosophical on you today, but this is the reality of the situation. And in order to change the reality, we have to change the way we operate about things. Do we continue to operate in an aberrant government? Because that's the way we've been taught, and that's the way we've always believed it to be so. Or do we, in boldness and in truth, step out and say, the king can't flatten the earth, and Parliament can't make it round? You see, the bottom line is this: it's a matter of decision. It's a matter of embracing the truth and then acting on it. How much longer will we continue to operate under the king's command? How much longer will we continue to operate under Parliament's law? When will we realize that we are a government established by the people through the consent of the people? And in that principle, it merely requires the removal of consent. I mean, I'm not oversimplifying. How do you say that word? Simplifying. That's it. I am not oversimplifying this, because it is just simply that simple. Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And whenever any government operates contrary to those means, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish. How do we alter or abolish? Well, we are not a kingdom ruled by Parliament. We don't have to have rebellion. We, in a constitutional republic, alter or abolish by simply removing consent. It occurred to me the other day, teaching the principles of nullification, that states do not nullify. States simply declare reality. In Federalist Paper 78, Alexander Hamilton said, "No law, therefore, contrary to the Constitution can be valid." I mean, that's very simple, isn't it? No law contrary to the Constitution can be valid. The Supremacy Clause declares that as well. The Supremacy Clause states, "This Constitution, comma, and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, semicolon." You see, the acts of Congress are not supreme over the states unless they are made in pursuance to the Constitution. And Hamilton says, no legislative act, therefore, contrary to the Constitution. Thomas Jefferson said something very similar. Whenever the general government assumes undelegated powers, its acts are unauthoritative, void, and of no force. You see, if the general government is using power that's not delegated, then that power has to be stolen. And we don't have to nullify unconstitutional acts. They are, by their very nature, null and void. If I steal your car, do I have the legal authority to use it? Of course not. Do I have the legal authority to sell it? Of course I don't. I stole your car. The legal authority still remains in you. Do you have to declare my authority null and void? No, you don't. By the very nature that I stole your car, every act that I do with your car has no legal force. But you see, if you allow me to drive around in your car all day, then my assumed authority, which is illegal, becomes an apparent authority. Not a real authority, but an apparent authority by the continued use of your stolen car. Do you have to nullify my use of your car? No, the very act of my stealing your car makes it null and void. So nullification is not an act by the states. It is a declaration. It is simply pointing out that the world is round. And no matter what the king says, he does not change that fact. Every act by the federal government that's done outside the Constitution, according to the Supremacy Clause and the framers, has no legal force. And all we have to do is simply stand up and declare, you are acting without power, and we don't recognize it. It is just that simple.
The Krisanne Hall Show. She's Liberty's lobbyist. Krisanne Hall Show. She's Liberty's lobbyist.
Some men say the earth is round, and some say it's flat. If it is round, can the king's command flatten it? And if it is flat, can Parliament make it round? Robert Bolt's play about St. Thomas More, called A Man for All Seasons, brings us the theme for today's show. At what point does assumed authority become apparent authority? And how long before apparent authority becomes actual authority? This is the question that we have to answer for ourselves, because we are dangerously close to creating a non-reality. I'll just call it a non-reality because it's a reality outside of reality. We are altering our perception of government, which is creating a brand new reality about who we are. And the interesting thing is, this is not new. This is the tool that tyrants have used for generations. When I teach the genealogy of the Constitution, one of the very first kings that I discuss is a king by the name of William I. William I was a Norman king, but he had come to rule the Anglo-Saxons. The Anglo-Saxons had created a limited monarchy, meaning the king did not have unlimited power. He was limited by common law. when William assumed the control, his rule over the Anglo-Saxons, he was very unhappy by the fact that he was going to be a limited king. He thought he was going to be like a Norman king with unlimited power. He did not like the fact that the common law limited him, so he realized, having conquered the Anglo-Saxons to become king, that a declaration of the elimination of common law would not work out well for him. You know, when you conquer a people to become king, you automatically create enemies. And if he were to stand up and declare common law to be null and void, then there would have been an immediate rebellion and quite likely a loss of his own head. So William realized in order to keep his head and his reign, he would have to trick the people into eliminating common law by fundamentally transforming the government, not in reality, but in perception. You see, he's not going to go in and rewrite common law. He changes out the judges who are left to interpret the common law. He changes them with judges who are not loyal to the interpretation of the common law, but loyal to the ideology of the king. And then he starts using those judges to reinterpret the common law in the manner that he wants, inserting his foreign law into the interpretation of common law, so that now the common law says things that it's not supposed to say. And the foreign law is applied to the people even when it's contrary to common law. He starts then chasing the landowners off of their land with threat and force, declaring their lands abandoned, and then handing over their land to his foreign friends. How do you keep foreign law in a kingdom if it's not full of people who like that foreign law better than the common law of the land? He takes over the churches by replacing the leadership in the churches with men who are not loyal to the Word of God, but loyal to the ideology of the king. So he can convince the churches to make the people do things, even when those things are contrary to the Word of God. This is how transformation happens. It doesn't happen by changing the reality. It happens by changing the perception of that reality, until the people start operating under perception instead of reality. Did it change the fact that their common law existed? No. Did he eliminate common law? No, he did not. But he changed those who were in power. And we, in a cult of expert and personality worship, begin to operate under what we are told rather than what is reality. And at which point do we become slaves in our minds to this altered reality, this altered state? Well, the point that we become slaves is the point that we refuse to stand. Will you stand?
The Krisanne Hall Show. She's Liberty's lobbyist. The Krisanne Hall Show. She's Liberty's lobbyist.
You know, our current federal government is such a kingdom now. It's almost difficult to talk about the parallels because they're just simply bone-chilling. And it literally sounds like I'm making this stuff up. It sounds like I am rewriting history so that it looks like our reality, but in reality, history repeats. And so, this is who we are. My goodness, we can't get any closer to a kingdom than we are today. Well, I suppose we can. Well, I don't know. Can we? I mean, I'm conflicted by this, really. We are operating under totalitarian rule. And we are suffering from such Stockholm syndrome that we actually worship our oppressors. I'm always stunned at the cult of personality worship that we have of our oppressors. On the federal, on the state, on the local level. Oh my goodness. So on the local level, right? I am a Floridian by residency. And we have an attorney general by the name of Pam Bondi. She is nationally known because Fox picked her up some time ago. Not quite sure why. I'm convinced it was because she's a female and she's blonde. And Fox needed a token female conservative, because we have, as conservatives, have to prove that we are not engaging in a war on women and we are not racist. So we have to choose our spokespersons to reflect our non-racist, non-biased, non-sexist nature. It's rather amusing to watch us respond to the accusations. I mean, really, that's all it is a galvanic reaction to the fact that the progressives want the conservatives to be demonized. And so in order to combat the demonization by the progressives, we say, oh, no, we're not. Look, we have these people who are in our group. And since these people are in our group, then we're not who we're not who you say we are. I mean, that is absolutely such a childish and ridiculous reaction. Again, the truth stands alone. And the fact that we allow them to direct the narrative backs us into these ridiculous corners of uplifting people to the point of worship. Where now we as the... It's crazy. We as the conservatives cannot criticize these people that we've lifted up. Because if we criticize these people that we've lifted up to be the proof that we are not who they say we are, then now all of a sudden we prove them right? We are who we say we are because we're criticizing the very people that we lifted up to prove our innocence. You see, that's why my motto has been liberty over security, principle over party, truth over personalities. You see, we don't need to lift up spokespersons because of their gender or because of their race. My goodness, that's what gets us into trouble. And we have Attorney General Pam Bondi, who we have been, in the conservative circles, been lifting up as this champion of conservatism when she is not and never has been. Proof and truth shows she was a Democrat most of her life and simply converted to being a Republican when she decided to become politically active. And now that she's an attorney general, she's absolutely the worst attorney general that I have ever experienced in the state of Florida. I didn't vote for her, by the way. Not that you care, and not that I should tell you anyway, because I don't endorse candidates, but I just want you to know that this woman is not a conservative, even though Fox proclaims her to be. She has taken up in the state of Florida an active battle against the Second Amendment, trying to get the Supreme Court of Florida to give an opinion that law enforcement can automatically assume that you're a criminal simply because they know that you're carrying a gun. Well, the state of Florida allows you to carry a gun with a permit. But according to Pam Bondi, you should have to prove your innocence after law enforcement assumes that you're guilty. Does that sound like a perspective that a conservative should have? Guilty until proven innocent, especially with the Second Amendment? Not only that, she has fought to have the Supreme Court give the opinion that our Florida law enforcement has the same power and authority as the NSA. That they can search our electronic devices without warrants. Does that sound like a conservative? who wants to allow the government to deny the Fourth Amendment, engage in warrantless searches? Of course not. But because we've created this cult of expert, this cult of personality worship, and we've championed her as our defense instead of using truth as our defense, you can't criticize her. I point this out. We have a three-way race for Attorney General in the state of Florida. A Democrat, a Republican, and a Libertarian. And when I point out that our Republican is not a conservative in any way, shape, or form, I'm immediately attacked by Republicans. One lady who's a Floridian, lives in my community, loves to say, it's great, Krisanne, to see how nobody is good enough for you. Well, I suppose that can seem like a reality when the fact that we are surrounded by people who are unqualified for their jobs and people who continually destroy our liberty. All I'm asking for is somebody who understands their role under the Constitution and understands their job. There are plenty of people out there who are willing to do that. The problem is that the establishment Republicans will not embrace them, and we cannot criticize a Republican. Well, I'm under the belief that nobody is above criticism. I'm not above criticism. No one is above criticism, especially our employees. But you see, when our reality becomes nothing more than our perception, truth can be easily denied. And when truth is denied, you eliminate your ability to fix the problems. Pam Bondi in the state of Florida is the problem. The fix lies in the truth. She does not understand the Constitution. She has no desire to understand the Constitution. She wants to operate under government power. That is not a conservative perspective, and that is a truth. But when we swing out to the national level, how does that work? How much has our perception become reality? All of these executive orders, all of these unconstitutional laws, ratified by Congress, and they continue to operate as if they are truth, as if they are law, but they're nothing more than a stolen car. Congress, our federal government, driving around in the car they've stolen from the states, using power they've stolen from the states. The federal government in the executive branch running around operating under stolen power, power stolen from the legislative branch. Their assumed illegal authority is becoming apparent legal authority, because nobody will take a stand and declare it for what it is. The states have become so afraid of losing federal funding and federal aid that they won't declare that the federal government is stealing their power. Congress has become so afraid of losing power when it's their turn that they won't stand up and declare the executive branch has stolen their power. Congressman Rob Bishop of Utah, who is chairman of the Congressional Western Caucus, announced, listen to this, announced August 11th, 2010, that he recovered 14 pages missing from an internal Department of Interior memo leaked in February of 2010. Okay, so Congressman Rob Bishop standing up pointing out that the Department of Interior, through executive order, had a plan before February of 2010 to seize our land. Congressman Rob Bishop informing Congress that the BLM has expanded its power through executive order. Watch out, this is what's going to happen. And what did Congress do about that? Was there congressional hearing on the Department of Interior? Was Secretary Salazar called to the carpet? Congressman Bishop says the reality is that this is not the complete set of documents pertaining to this administration's plan to overhaul the way public lands are managed in this country. We know that other documents like this are out there. We've requested them, but folks at the Interior continue to stonewall. He says, my biggest concern is that they are willing to let documents this damning out of their safekeeping. They are surely protecting others that are far worse and even more revealing. Where is Congress? What happened to Cliven Bundy didn't have to happen if Congress was doing their job. They knew about this in 2010. Where are your conservative Republicans now?
The Krisanne Hall Show. She's Liberty's lobbyist. Krisanne Hall Show. She's Liberty's lobbyist.
Congressman Rob Bishop from Utah, and they have a major stake in this, right? Because the federal government is assuming ownership of land on the western part of the United States. I think somebody said 1 in every 3 acres of land. The federal government has assumed ownership. Now, I say that very deliberately. Assumed ownership. They don't have legal ownership. The federal government can only legally own 10 square miles of land for the state capital. That, by the way, is why Washington, D.C. is insane. Because, you see, they can't expand the boundaries of Washington, D.C. by Constitution. They are limited to set 10 square miles. So they have to stack and pack them in there because they can't get any more land legally. There is no such thing as a national park. There is no such thing as federally owned land outside the 10 square miles. They can lease land from the states for military posts. But any ownership of land by the federal government is a stolen ownership, an assumed authority, and not a real authority. But we knew about this long before Congressman Bishop uncovers this, because we understand the Constitution. But you see, Congressman Bishop uncovered in 2010 the BLM's motives to taking our land. He says in page 3, paragraph 6 of these 14 pages, the sentence, in order to expand this network of treasured lands to include the diversity of landscapes currently managed by the BLM, shows that this administration is working to broaden the jurisdictional scope of lands currently managed by BLM. Is that shock? We're seeing it happen. We knew it was a directive in 2010 and did nothing about this. Page 5, paragraph 5, the sentence. Should the legislative process not prove fruitful, or if nationally significant natural or cultural land resources were to come under the threat of imminent harm, the The BLM would recommend that the administration consider using the Antiquities Act, proving that once again we're going to circumvent Congress by reinterpreting some law to fit our plans. Page 6, Section B, page 7, Section 4, page 8, Section 3 details planning for further land acquisition and funding mechanisms. Page 7, paragraph 1, page 6, paragraph 6. By their own numbers, the administration will target the acute problem, they said, and that's, quote, the acute problem of private land holdings in BLM-administrated areas to the sum of 412,675 acres or more. That's more than 370,000 football fields. The acute problem of private land holdings. Page 9, paragraph 5. The BLM recommends that any major funding increases be phased in over a 5-year period to allow the BLM time to build capacity in order to accomplish the increased workload. No, over 5 years so that we won't notice this increased. And here we are, 4 years later, and Cliven Bundy is the victim of the acute problem of private land holdings. Let me ask you something. Why are we allowing a stolen authority, an assumed authority, to be an apparent authority? We consent to this through our funding of it, our paying of our taxes, and through the allowed theft of our land, our property, and our liberty. It is time that we deny this apparent authority and reestablish the legal authority that says we shall not consent to stolen power. States stand. If they won't, people, you must. God bless. See you tomorrow.